Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll wait just a minute here to let folks come in. Hope everybody's having a good Thursday. Almost made it to the weekend. So that's a good sign.
Beautiful weather here today. We'll take it, that's for sure.
Yeah, same here. I think we're, a few states apart, but it's summer's cooling down a little bit where I am, and it's getting nice now.
Same here. Corn crop's looking really good. Weather's actually making it so everything will finish out pretty nice. So farmers around here are happy.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome everyone to our webinar today, Improve Uptime and Compliance with a Preventive Maintenance Program Built for the Food and Beverage Industry. I want to welcome our speaker today, Matt Burtz. Matt is a solution-driven maintenance expert that is passionate about building and implementing successful maintenance strategies and best practices. With experience in both agriculture and food production industries, he has enjoyed his career growing through the ranks from technician to director of maintenance. So he really knows what it takes to be successful from both sides of the desk. Matt is a Limble user. He was a Limble user while serving as the maintenance director at Preferred Popcorn and is now acting as service foreman at Acres Equipment Solutions. Today, we're going to cover how to set up your PM program to build a sustainable path toward increased uptime, how to document procedures and track completed work so you can pass audits without stress, and how software can help you optimize equipment maintenance to reduce reduce breakdowns, and a whole lot more little tidbits that we'll pick up throughout there as well. So now, Matt, I'm going to pass it to you to give us a little introduction about Preferred Popcorn.
Thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. Preferred Popcorn is an awesome company. They ship popcorn internationally all around the world, continuing to grow. Truly enjoyed my time there when I was worked for them, and we're based out of central Nebraska, but we do have a location in Indiana and also in Mexico, I do believe. So, Preferred Popcorn takes the kernel from the start of production, and then they take it from the ground and then end up growing it all the way to packaging and shipping and distribution.
Awesome.
So talking through our core challenges that we faced when we were at Preferred Popcorn, we had 4 different things that we were in. Number one was a new plant. So with a new plant comes new benchmarks. What are we shooting for? Everything works. Everything's great. Everything's new. It should stay running. But we started to see areas that were already needing improvement after operations for a year or two. Also, COVID was a huge hit for us, which I'm sure many are still feeling the squeeze with inconsistent parts availability. So the challenges that arise with that of how do we keep equipment running with minimal parts, unavailable parts? Do we fabricate? Do we order? Do we find other suppliers? And how do we organize within that? Our third challenge that we faced was, we're always confronted with that question of fix it, but don't spend any money. It's very common in the maintenance world. Everybody wants it to stay running. Everybody understands that it needs to run. But at the same time, we got to keep that cost low. So there's always that fine balance of how do we produce well and how do we stay running? And also make sure that we don't break the bank, right? Because we can't keep an entire assembly line on the parts shelf. We wish that we could just walk in and for every piece that breaks, we could just go grab one off the shelf and come put it on. We wanted to make sure that we managed the resources that we already owned well, and making sure that we were allocating proper resources to stay running. And finally was a lack of visibility. We were working on we had a good program. We had a good food safety program, food defense, and we wanted to make that better than where we had been. A lot of that, and we'll talk about these a little bit more in depth here momentarily. But a lot of that was paper tracking, email tracking. If it comes to my email, nobody else sees it. So how do we make that more global? How do we make that more visible and ultimately improve communication between each other? So our first challenge, we were talking about establishing benchmarks with a new plant. We had, like I said, we had great equipment reliability. We had new equipment, but as many of you know, those of you in maintenance, just because it's new doesn't mean that it's perfect. There's a reason that we have a job. There's a reason that we do what we do. Stuff breaks at the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether it's new, came off the shelf, broke, wasn't produced correctly, or something's not aligned. Things happen. A forklift runs into something. Um, then we have to respond. We didn't know exactly where to start, other than the fact that we knew that we needed to start generating PMs. And so one of the areas that we went through doing that, I started with a simple piece of paper, and I took one piece of equipment that I knew really well, and I went through, I created an Excel spreadsheet, I created a checklist, and I walked out to that piece of equipment and I wrote down all of my notes, and I went back to my desk and I sat down with that piece of paper and I go, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to put it in a folder and I'm going to forget about it. But my food safety guy, what if he needs to see my records? So that was a little bit of the beginning of what do we start working on? We have tons of pieces of equipment, tons of moving parts. So we needed to figure out what was most critical. And at the beginning of it, we were tasked with, my general manager came to me, and it was this was really the leaping off point. I mean, he says, Matt, he says, we are firefighters, we are reactive. We would love to move into fire prevention. How do we prevent these fires from happening before they even start? Or how do we make it so that they're very easily manageable before they get way out of hand? So that was really the first part of trying to figure out, where do we shift from? Where do we pivot? We knew that we wanted to pivot from firefighting to fire prevention. So, we were able to take care of those challenges one by one as they came up, and we had ways to mitigate them, or hopefully before they even got too bad. We switched from unplanned, costly, time down, stressful maintenance to planned maintenance, where we were actually able to take on the things that we needed to in the appropriate time. Challenge number 2, parts availability. How many times have you guys called up somebody and said, hey, I need these parts yesterday? We didn't know we needed them till today, but we need them yesterday. Bad spot to be, right? Hopefully you got a piece of backup equipment that you can get in place. In the meantime, maybe you have some spares you can rob some parts off of to get things up and running. But parts availability was a big struggle for us because everybody was down. I remember at one point in the plant, we had a customer that wanted an order, but we couldn't produce the order because we didn't have the bags. And the bagging, we couldn't get the bags because the paper mills hadn't sent the paper product for the bags to be created. And the paper mills, it just kept snowballing backwards. Some of the challenges that we faced were some of our equipment was foreign, international, great pieces of equipment, but we were having trouble with parts allocation. And so if we couldn't get them vendor direct, straight from the supplier, we had to start branching out from there. And about that time, I had hired a guy from a different facility, and he came with a great set of resources. We found a local machine shop, and we started producing our own parts, shafts, rollers. We were able to add a machine shop to our parts problem, or our parts situation. Some of it we ran into was parts were scattered. We wanted to, somebody said, well, I think we had this valve. I had it happen to me 2 or 3 times where I waited for over a month for a part to show, and I was able to make equipment run, or we had some other temporary fix in place. And, the new piece showed up, we got it put on, and for whatever reason, it never failed. But within a week or so, I found that part in a different location I never expected. And so we really honed in on sorting out our parts and figuring out, what do we have on hand? Where can we get it from? Who's got it? If I can't get it from my vendor, bearings, great one. You can cross-reference across. It doesn't have to come from the vendor. There's part numbers in the race. For those of you that aren't aware, you can cross-locate and figure out different suppliers for some of these pieces. So that was one of the big challenges that we faced, and we're still facing a little bit today. Another one was for like making the case for resources. You know, maintenance departments are automatically looked at as an expense, straight up. But the difference comes in when you can reduce the amount of expense that you see in the budget line. Maybe the dollars don't change, but what happens is if you can increase that profit margin on the top end, then your expense to keep the maintenance department running doesn't look as big on at the bottom line. And I remember the biggest feather in my hat when we really got into this. It was a year later. I sat down with my general manager and he says, Matt, he says, this last year, I don't think we had one single day where we were shut down for longer than 24 hours. And that was the benchmark. We're going back to challenge number one, where we had gone from, we'd had breakdowns, and we still had breakdowns within that year, but they were manageable breakdowns. We were not shut down for as long, or we had some of those areas, those vendors already pre-selected ahead of time. We knew where we were getting our parts. We knew where we were getting our service. We can't fix it all. We certainly try to. The more we can fix in-house, the easier it is for us to stay on top of everything. And so, sorry here. Go ahead and go to the next one there. Lack of visibility. So we were talking about documentation. Everything needed to be properly documented. For food safety quality, we had our auditing companies that would come in and they wanted to see all the documentation. Corrective actions was a big one. When we would get our annual audit, they would come through and they'd say, all right, we want to make sure that we keep those minor nonconformances as small as we possibly can. And we definitely don't want to see any of those major nonconformances where we could get into trouble. And so with the documentation, I worked hand in hand with our food safety coordinator. When it came time for me to sit down and I started building our PMs, he had already had some of this stuff put together. And I asked him, I said, what do you want to keep track of? He says, we're not getting our paperwork turned in like we need to. And we're getting lost in corrective actions that need to be handled in a timely manner. He says, I'm having to make phone calls, I'm having to make emails. And so one of the things that was important for us was a level of transparency of how do we make sure that these things don't get lost? How do we not get lost in emails? How do we not get lost in text messages, phone calls, or, hey, I just bumped into Bob and Bob said last week that this was broke. Bob never told me, or Bob may have told me and maybe I forgot. And so we wanted to make sure that we were actually getting the work done that needed to be done and on a level of criticality. We wanted to make sure that we hit the most important things first and the tickets that had been open the longest. We wanted to make sure that we kept that open ticket time short. That way, when the auditing company comes in and they're conducting a food safety inspection, and no matter which company it was, and they come in and say, hey, we see this as a possible problem. We see this as a possible intrusion problem. We see this as a possibility, right? Because in the food industry, everything is a potential contaminant, right? I mean, everything from a fly coming through, if the examiner sees a fly come through, if they see a bird that they don't like in the right spot, everything needs to be taken care of in the name of food defense, down to the nth degree. And so we wanted to make sure that not only were we producing a fantastic product, but we wanted to make sure that that product was safe for the consumers as well. It wasn't just a matter of meeting compliance and making sure that we complied with everything. We wanted to exceed that, not just because we were trying to keep the auditors off our back or because we wanted to make sure that the FDA was happy, but at the end of the day, we wanted our customers to keep buying our product. We wanted to have a quality piece of whatever it was that we were serving, in our case, kernels. You go to the movie theater, you are eating quality popcorn. And so we wanted to make sure that that was done an extreme level, if you will, of safety, making sure that everything was protected. So by having that level of visibility, everybody on board, everybody can see it. We ensured that there was a lot more gaps that were covered.
Awesome. We're going to do a short little poll here. I'll launch it right now. Would love to know, folks who are on the call, what the single biggest barrier you would consider, or barrier or challenge that you're facing with maintenance right now. You should see a little poll on your screen there. We'll leave it up for a minute, let folks answer, and interested to hear what everybody has to say. This is always fun to see on my end because I can see them coming in, and we'll share here as soon as I kind of see that the answers are trickling out. And you guys are participating really well, which is also awesome. So keep it up. Speaking of participation, I'll just throw out while we've got a minute here. As you have questions for Matt throughout the presentation, feel free to toss them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you're viewing on a desktop. If there's anything that you want to ask him, feel free to toss those in.
Really curious to see what the results of this one is. I could see, I'm guessing there's some guys out there that are probably going check, 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 check.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to choose one. And actually, so I think I'm gonna give it a 3, 2, 1 here, and we'll end the poll and I'll share the results. So you should be able to see there that we're looking at, our top answer is task assignment scheduling, prioritization for your team, right? Which really plays into a lot of those challenges that you were mentioning, Matt. A lack of maintenance data for reporting. So that lack of visibility is a common thing as well. And frequent or lengthy breakdowns. So it sounds like you all are in the right spot, which is great. So we'll go ahead and keep going here. Matt, I'll pass it back to you.
Sounds great. So, number one was we wanted to increase uptime. And I'm so glad to see a lot of you. Well, it's mixed bag. I don't want to see you having any of these challenges because I've been in that seat. I know what each one of those lines feels like on a different level. And sometimes that changes from day to day with those priorities on that poll. For us, these were not exclusive. They were not encapsulate, like increase uptime, right? Well, that sounds great. It sounds easy, right? But we all know it's not. And you do that by solving each one of those things in that poll every day. And it's a matter of balancing of how do we do that? How do we increase reporting, making sure that guys are getting things done and that we improve compliance, making sure that we actually are capturing the information that we need for those things. Before I move on, just talking with that poll a little bit, we'll get into talking about capturing the data. The fun part with Limble, and if any of you have had a chance, I did a short video with Limble a couple years ago that's out there on YouTube, and I think it got shared too as well. But the important thing for me was that it was mobile. I was tech savvy, and most of the people on my team were tech savvy. And one of the things I can tell you right away is, and we're going to go through this, go ahead and jump to the next one here, is start small. I can't tell you that enough. Start small with buy-in and work on building it out from there. That way you work out a lot of the bugs ahead of time. You find a flow that works well, because if you're trying to get people to buy into your program, if you're trying to get them to use it and they're having a lot of hiccups and they don't find it easy, they are not going to buy into it. I went through 6 or 7 different CMMS programs piloting. I spent 2 or 3 months piloting different CMMS programs, trying to find what I was after. Before I was in the food industry, I worked for a John Deere dealership as a service tech and a service manager. And I had an idea of the data that I wanted to capture. I had the analytics that I wanted to come back and view. And all of that rolled into making sure that I captured that I had flexibility. I could make it what I wanted it to be. And so I started with me and a couple other guys. And once we had a lot of the flow and stuff figured out, we started onboarding more people, those that wanted to be technically involved. And those that didn't want to be technically involved, we still had another solution for that. So let's jump right into here. What are you launching your PM programs, performing a criticality analysis? What is burning you day in and day out? What is burning you week by week? For us, we knew that we wanted to PM everything. We wanted to capture data on everything. And that is the end goal, right? We do want to be there, but don't start with that. Start with what is critical, or maybe for you, maybe it's what's easy. Maybe you don't have something that's sitting there just burning up every day and day in and out, but take a piece of equipment that you know really well, or take a piece or an area of the operation that you know really well. You know what's common to break down on it. You know what parts that you typically need. You know who you're contacting with vendors. And when you are piloting a CMMS program, or even if you are just in the beginning stages of gathering information, when you come into that, think about that one piece and develop a flow from that. When you do that, it will make your job so much easier. For me, I started with our outside equipment. We had outside and inside. You can go ahead and jump to the next one here, Katie. We had our outside equipment include trucks, tractors, conveyors, augers, things of that nature. I come from the ag world, so that's what I knew really well. I knew I wanted to capture mileage, hour meters, because those were my trigger points, right? We all have trigger points of when does maintenance need to be done? Is it done in a time fashion? Is it done in hours, miles, or do I want to perform visuals every so often, or hear? For those of you that are in an administrative position within maintenance, and you're like, I don't know where to start. Start with a vehicle. Start with something simple. Everybody can be in maintenance because we can see, we can hear, and we can smell. If you can see a problem, if you are around it every day, you're walking through and you are visually seeing something, eventually you'll get to the point of where something doesn't look right. Or I remember multiple times I was in that plant every day and I could tell when something didn't sound right coming from across the plant. You don't have to know what it is, but something sounds off or something smells off. We smell a burning belt. We smell something is hot. Those can be indicators for us. Shout out to my mentor, actually, who I believe is with us in this as well, that taught me that skill at a very young age, and it has carried on with this. And so building your asset, when we start getting into the granular level, you can take this as deep as you want, but start shallow. Make, model, serial number. Who made it? What's the model number on it? Serial number, right? Most of the time when you call for parts or something, a lot of times that's going to get you where you need to go. Year of manufacture, date, that may play into it as well. What are some spare parts? If you're starting with a vehicle, for instance, oil filters, are you doing your own oil changes, or are you outsourcing that? If you can do them in-house, especially if you have a lot, there's one way to start saving some money and some cost factor right there. We did a lot of our own internal service, right? Greasing, oil changes, filters. Start keeping track of those spare parts. Another thing that I did, I went straight to our engineering firm, and I sat down with them for 2 days. And when I was starting to build Limble out, they had designed our new packaging plant from the ground up: concrete, steel walls, all the equipment, layouts, everything. I sat down and they were more than happy. You know why? They're going to sell me service and they're going to sell me parts and anything that they can do to help enable that, because they had to come from another state. When they come from another state, you want to show up with absolutely everything that you need. And so we tried to, I said, what common pieces do you have break down on this? All right, spare parts list. We started building, like, what are we going to keep on the shelf? Vehicles, really simple. Like I said, make, model, serial number, things of that nature. And then the buildings, like I said, blueprints was great, because in those blueprints, we knew what planned expansion was possibly going to happen. That was already documented ahead of time. So that was, if I ever thought about doing something different, I didn't want to interfere with that. All of these PDF documents, all of these Word documents can easily be added into Limble, because here's what, at the end of the day, what you want to do. I wanted to be able to walk out to our checkware. During the demo, I'm going to talk about the checkware. I wanted to be able to walk out to that checkware that I received a work request from, and I wanted to be able to pull up all of the information that I needed in that list. And Limbo, I could do that. I had lockout tagout, I had safety documents, I had certification documents, because our food safety coordinator would go in and he would attach certification documents. So I knew when that checkware was coming due, and I had a PM set up for that as well. So defining maintenance tasks and triggers. So we were talking about a little bit mileage. It's every 3,000 miles, every 5,000 miles. We would do monthly mileage checks. We would go out with a PM, pull it up, type in the miles. And if it was under a threshold, nothing happened. Then until the next month when the PM rolled around, we would punch in the miles again. Now, if it was over that threshold, it would automatically, I had it set up to give me an automatic PM of everything that I wanted done, everything that I wanted checked. And with this right here, this is the key thing. Limbo is customizable. A CMMS program is customizable, right? Because it has to work. These maintenance people want things to work. We want to see them work from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. And the great part of it is I set it up. I remember I had a piece of equipment I was doing visual inspections on every week. And after several weeks of looking at it, I'm sitting here going, I'm checking this too often. And what do I need to do? I was able to go into my scheduling line and change it. I'm going to change this to every month. I want to inspect this every month. One click, basically. And I went in, changed it from a week to every month. I want this to come up. Or I don't need to look at this part of it every month. I want to look at this part annually. And I can make a PM just for that. You can design a PM for virtually anything you want. If it's a PM to remind you to go pick up the dog from the dog sitter, or to go pick up your kids from the babysitter, or anything of that nature, PMs are completely customizable, and you can make them what you want them to be, and you can have them triggered so that the technician who may not be so tech savvy, all he needs to do is go up and punch in the mileage number. And as soon as he hits enter and completes that work order, boom, he has a new work order that you've already custom designed for everything that needs to be done. And you can set a time frame for that to happen and say, I want this completed within 7 days. And what you've begun to do is you have begun to put some of the liability on those doing the work. You know immediately when that work order was started. You know when that work order was finished. And you'll see in my notes, in my areas here, I put an area for request approval. And the reason I put that in there was I wanted to make sure that the work was getting done, that the documentation was happening as it needed to. So that gave me a chance to put a set of eyes on it. And maybe I wanted to stop in and check on the project. We were in a unique situation where not only was I in the office, but I was probably the guy on the floor turning wrenches right with them anyways. But maybe that's not you. Maybe you're no longer turning the wrenches. Maybe you are the guy in the office and you just need to know that, hey, I need some status updates on this project. You can build that right into the work order. So that way, when they hit the check mark and close it, you can have it start a new work order, like you'll see here in a little bit. Or and maybe it just closes out and it's done. Or maybe it starts a document that you need to capture separate information on. Maybe they completed that work order line by line, but hey, I got to have this second document. We took paper corrective action documents, transferred all that information into Limbo. So we were capturing the same information, but no paperwork. The technician didn't fill it out on the floor, bring it to you. You took it, you put it in the copier, you scanned it, faxed it, emailed it to 3 people, and then put it in a folder to forget about it. We took out all of those steps and it started saving a ton of time. So writing those PM checklists, I keep flowing from slide to slide here, Katie. But again, it's the same thing. What do we want to capture? What do we want our technicians to do each and every time we walk up to a machine? Is it powered? How do you remove power? Do you have a safety checklist that you want followed each and every time? If they put the check mark in the box and they sign the document, they said that they followed the lockout tagout procedure. If they are not, if they check the box and they didn't lock out tag out, and now you have a situation that comes up, now you have some paperwork. Now you have some grounds for things that weren't followed as you wanted them to. And so you have the ability to add as much or take as much away as you'd like. And so that, depending on the level of safety that you need to follow, obviously safety is number one. How do we ensure that we are safe? Boom, the document's right in front of them. They open the work order. Anytime they work on this piece of equipment, Have you read the safety procedures for this piece of equipment? Have you received training on this piece of equipment? They have to acknowledge it. You can set it up that way. You can attach the safety documents, the PM materials for that as well. And then you, like I said, you can make these instructions as simple as you want, as complex as you want. It's fun when you sit down and you start building this PM program out. When you start building out the PM, it's pretty crazy the flows that you can come up with if you have an open mind. And you don't have to be a computer science programmer. Forgive me on the terminology, but you don't have to be a programmer in order to make this work. I hit one of them out there that was just blew my mind. Like, it had the level of complexity that I wanted, but I was going to have to almost be a computer programmer in order to figure out how to work it. Limble is not that way. That was one of my criteria. Number one, it's got to be mobile. I got to be able to do 95% of what I need to on the phone. Because I'm not at my desk 95% of the time. And then the other part of it is I need to make sure that we are doing everything that we possibly can to capture all of the information that we needed to. So then test it. Remember, we started with one piece of equipment. I've added a lot here in the last 5 slides, but let's go back to that one piece of equipment that you know really well. Start with something simple. If you already have it on a PM, on a paper document, great. Take that and load that into Limble, and then go out and actually do it. My test process when I was piloting CMMS programs was to walk out, touch a piece of equipment, and then gather all the information, come back to the office, build a PM program for it, perform that PM, go out and do a mock PM to it, and then capture the information and start a work order and do all of that with that one piece of equipment. And as I did that and I focused on one piece of equipment, I found a flow that I could use for everything I wanted to use after that. And so start with a simple PM, go to the operator's manuals, talk to the manufacturer, talk to the dealership. Don't be afraid to be vocal and reach out and say, I don't know what to do to fix this. Help me. That's one of the things that's probably maybe the most successful in doing this was, I don't know. But the book does. Other people do. Other people that touch it day in and day out do. You don't have to be the expert in order to do expert PM service. You don't have to have that knowledge, but you need to know where to look. And you need to know who to talk to. It's not so much what you know as it is who you know, right? Train, launch, fine tune the program. So again, we took one piece, we liked it. So I took that one conveyor I started with outside that I knew really well, and I added all of the outside pieces of equipment, all the trucks, all the trailers, all the tractors, augers, everything, part numbers, serial numbers, everything I wanted to keep track. And then I built the inside program. I built that from the ground up of things that I wanted to keep track of. And once I did that, I started bringing more people on board. I started bringing some of the other managers on board and talking with them and continued to fine tune it to the point of where I released it to everybody that I could within the company. And those that were not buying in on the tech side, I worked with them. I was gentle with them. I talked with them. And even if they didn't feel comfortable entering a simple work request in that conversation, I did that for them. You know why? Because it made my program successful. Be flexible. Be flexible in how you roll this out, and understand that it is going to change 1,000 times, and that is okay. Why? Because you want it to work for you. Your PM program is not going to be the same as another location that may be across town within the same organization, the same company. Why? You're different. Your equipment's different. It's ran different bags. It's bottled differently. Everybody's going to have something a little different. People are different. Make it work for you, and make sure that it matches all the documentation and everything that you want to keep track of.
Awesome. We're going to do one more poll here real quick. And Matt, I'll go ahead and prompt you to get ready to share your screen, and I'll launch this poll.
Yep, I'm ready to launch whenever you want me to. I'll wait till your poll's done here.
Sweet. All right. Yeah. So next question, what kind of maintenance system are you all using? I know we've got lots of Limble users on the call, but I'm curious as to other folks who might be on the call as well, using different types of programs. All right, I'm going to give it another minute or so. Not a whole 60 seconds, but Awesome, awesome, awesome. In the interest of time, I'm going to have us move on. And I will go ahead and stop my share so Matt, you can share.
Awesome. Jump right into it here. Whoops, and then I grabbed the wrong one. That's usually what happens, right?
Yep.
All righty.
I'm seeing your email, Matt.
You're still seeing my email?
Yep. So
That's
it might just be that you shared that window. So you might want to stop share and try again. Yeah.
Let's try this again. Thank you.
Mhm.
There we go. Sorry about that.
There it is. Looks great.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, now you guys know what I'm up to for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we are jumping right into assets, right? That's probably the best place to start, like we've said. And this, I want to talk to you guys for a minute. This is a 30,000 foot view. Come out and see Limble for yourself, set up a real demo, and where you can actually have one-on-one back and forth. My idea here is to share ideas with you, to give you an idea of a direction of where you can go. And primarily today, I'm focusing on assets, asset tracking. How do we turn assets that are not connected to the internet, not connected in any form of manner because they're 30, 40 years old, maybe they're a couple of years old, but they're just not electronically advanced. How do we track it? How do we make it something that we want it to be? And so what I've done here is I've created a simple bagging line right here, right? Now I'm probably missing some pieces of equipment, but my point is I want to show you just some simple things to go after. So number one, I'm working on the packaging line today. And like I said earlier, I want to work on the checkware. Now, all of these categories and all these data fields are everything that you see I've custom selected. I made them what I wanted them to be. What are my categories right now? I got CCPs, critical control points, right? And so let's filter down by that and just clean up this list a little bit. What are my critical control points, right? Magnets. I want to remove anything metal from the product flow, anything that's not grain. How do we got to get cleaned, right? So magnets were a critical control point, making sure that we didn't have any unnecessary metal intrusion, or if we did, that we captured that. Checkware, we want to make sure that we are sending out the correctly weighed product, right? And the feed, and then also making sure that final check, that metal detector, we're sending it through the metal detector, making sure that we don't have anything in that bag that should cause it to be rejected. So jumping straight to my checkware here, I want to walk through a little bit with my custom fields right here. All of these, I decided, I picked them and I labeled them of what I wanted them to be. You know, it's a weigh it all. It's a model 8675309. Okay. Serial number. I got that in there. But right here, last certification date, right? Critical control points, food and bev. When was it last certified? You know, is it weighing accurately? Who's the weighing authority? Who's coming in and doing that certification? And for me, it looks like it was done June 2nd of this year. And so I automatically, you can go in and you can create an alarm. You know, you'll be notified that this date is approaching. I want to be noted, you know, I want to be notified a couple months in advance, possibly 6 months in advance. Maybe that wait list to get them to come in to recertify is a long one. I want to make sure that I stay on top of that and that we don't fall out of certification. Why? If we're out of not certified, probably got to shut down. Any safety procedures, you know, you can load them here. Certification documents, you know, I can click on this and it will download my certification document. Now on your phone, it pops up. You can open the same thing. Congrats, it's certified. Bob Scalehouse did it June 1st, 2023. Oh, June 1st, 2023. Yeah, we'll close that out. What's this say here? Oh, June 2nd. I need to make a quick adjustment. Boom, done. And so when I come back to my landing page, you'll see that that made that change there. You know, if there's any specific equipment documents, you know, I got a lockout tagout PDF right here. Again, technician on his phone, he can open up the asset, pull this information up. And then how am I logging my time with the machine? Hours, 235 hours. That's what I'm trying to keep track of with this machine. Let's jump over to PMs real quick. Daily scale check. I know we're kind of running up on time here, guys, so I'm going to try to punch through this quickly here. But one of the things with my PMs, my daily scale check, we want to make sure that the thing works every day correctly. If somebody technician is coming through this, all of these fields were custom created and they say exactly what I want them to say. Maybe my paper document said this and I put it into this form right here. Make sure the scale machine is clear and free of debris. Now I'm the technician. I've got this open on my phone. Yep, it's clear and free of debris. Scale is zeroed out. Yep, scale is zeroed out. All right, put the 5-pound weight on the scale and record the reading. Okay, it is 25.4. Okay, 25-pound reading. Okay, it is, I put the 25-pound weight on, 26.7. Are all readings plus or minus 1 pound from intended weight? Let's see, 25-pound, 26. Nope, we're 1.7 pounds high. I hit no. Now right here, I can automatically trigger a work order. Technician hits this, he comes in, I'm going to assign it to technician. I hit create, boom, there's a work order that's made. Check wear fault. Now this is a work order template I had created ahead of time because I want a number of steps to be followed. Technician also has to come in here and put in their notes and complete the work order. The next step, we can come in. Let's jump over to that work order real quick. Here's that check wear fault work order. That check wear fault work order that was assigned to that same technician. Now you can come in and you can divide this up. Maybe you have an electrical team, maybe you have a safety team. You can set it up so that anybody gets notified that you want to be notified, and you can assign this to only certain people if you want. So now the technician's coming back through. All right, so maybe the other guy was the operator of the machine that completed the work order. Technician comes back through. Now he's got an extra step in here, perform scale calibration. You can upload that scale calibration procedure in here if you want. Now he's going to perform the test. Did it follow into certifications within 1 pound? No. Place machine, yes, it was within 1 pound, No further troubleshooting required, place machine back into service. He signs the document, moves on. Let's say he performed everything, did everything he was supposed to. He comes in and he hits no. He's got an instruction right here to call Bob's Scale House and talk to Bob for further diagnostics. Okay, technician's like, who's Bob and how do I get a hold of him? Well, he comes over here to vendors, and this is on his phone. He's got it right in front of him. He comes up into Bob's Scale House, name, contact. There's Bob's email, Bob's phone number, and he's at 334 West 8th Street or Waite Street. Haha, I like puns. I'm a dad, so it happens. But at the same time, we can see the assets that Bob is in charge of. Bob Scale House is in charge of the check wear at my plant, but maybe Bob does metal detectors too. We can come in and we can add those assets with that piece of equipment there as well. Are there any open work orders? We talked about the check wear fault. Maybe there's a corrective action. Maybe somebody noticed that the lacings coming out of the belt. If it's a belt type check wear, which carries a bag across, that's the type of check wear. You can attach a picture of it. So that way, when the technician walks up, he knows he's walking up to the correct one. So he comes in here, and a lot of this information was stuff that we wanted to capture on our corrective action. What was the issue? What caused it? Why did it happen? How do we fix it? We wanted to make sure that we captured nuts, bolts, hardware, was all the hardware accounted for, post repair. We wanted to attach a picture. Technician on his phone could take a picture of the area that it was cleaned up to confirm the area was clean, and he signed it. And then this section right here, I went ahead and just went through it because in this case, I was the acting manager. I approved everything that he had done. The picture that he sent me that he had attached looked good, and it allowed him to come through here. Was this a temporary repair? If it was, I got a list of instructions for him. If it wasn't, cool, no list of instructions. It was a permanent repair. And so everything captures out the way that I want to see it captured. And I'm able to get all of that information that I wanted to. And then, the other part of that was we talked about, I'm just going to briefly jump back over here to the other part. I got to clear out my filters up here because I don't want to look at critical control points anymore. Outside equipment, let's jump to that. I got my big red truck. It's the Jalopy 3500. PMs on that. I had a mileage check. So that way the technician, he walks out to it. He's going to walk up to it. He records the current miles, does a visual of the air pressure, oil level, condition. Whenever number he enters in here for miles, like I mentioned earlier, we can cause that to create a full service PM. And that full service PM, I can attach parts. I'm pointing at my screen with my finger, but obviously you guys can't see that. We got oil, filters, you can attach all the part numbers, everything that they need to know what to go grab off the shelf with that. So Katie, I am knocking on the door of time here. I apologize. We got a little long-winded, but what would you like to move into next from here?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think let's take a minute and talk about just in general, maybe just a couple of minutes here, what the sort of before and after we've covered before, but what the after state looked like at Preferred Popcorn with Limble, particularly around uptime and compliance. And then we'll move into Q&A because I want to give folks, I'm getting some great questions. I want to give folks an opportunity to ask you questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, this is a 30,000-foot view here that we were going through. But how did we know that we were ahead of time, or how did we know that we were doing well? We reduced the amount of breakdowns that we had, and the major breakdowns that we had. That was a number of ways that we were successful. Our food safety coordinator had never seen so much completed documentation. And like I said, it wasn't that we were bad at it, but we knew that we needed to be better. And so he was able to gather a lot of information, so much so that when the next audit rolled around, the auditor, if I remember correctly, was nitpicking because he couldn't find anything, which is great. I mean, they got to find something, right? And if they find it, we hope that it's really, really small and something that's easy to take care of and manage. But we had those work orders that had been open forever. We had that transparency of this thing's been open for 264 days. How do we know? Because there's a day counter in Limble. Was it a significant work order, or was it a project? Sometimes that plays in there as well. We were able to go in and take notes. One of the things that I did on projects that I would create an asset for a project of something big, something that was coming in here, or something that was taking a while to finish. And so I would come in and make a log and say, on this date and this time, I contacted so-and-so, parts still aren't in. And so I had a line by line log in here. If a person leaves, you have all of that vendor information captured in here. It was something I wanted to hit on that I feel like is really big. All of that vendor information is here, and it's global for everybody to reach out and get a hold of and contact the people that they need to make that connection with. We weren't broke down big, and we weren't broke down long. That was probably one of the biggest things that we saw right out of the gate. And because of that, we weren't costing ourselves twice. Breakdowns cost us twice, right? Number one, we're not producing, so we're losing money. Number two, we're making repairs, which is a second expense. That's always been my viewpoint of breakdowns. And so we went from unplanned to planned breakdowns of Tuesday afternoon. You guys are done. Perfect. We're going to come in and we're going to do our maintenance then.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's super rad. I'm going to move to some questions now, and I'll go ahead and, just because I don't want to interrupt the flow of things here, we'll go ahead and go to the top of the hour. For folks, if you're not able to stay, we'll miss you, but this will be recorded, so you'll receive a link to the recording, so that if you want to reference anything, you can. And we'll also include in there a link to Matt's LinkedIn profile, so you have a way to get in touch with him if you're interested. But I'll start with a question. And if Matt, if you want to stop sharing your screen, you're welcome to do that.
You betcha.
Let me start here. This is a great question. Because of cost, you want to minimize the amount of spare parts you keep on hand. You don't have too many, right? At the same time, you want to have what you need in order to keep things running. How do you determine what you actually need? And I'll add one little tidbit here. Limble is really good at helping you do this. How does that, can you speak to how that works a little bit, Matt?
Yeah, so some of that, unfortunately, some of that comes with experience, right? What are the areas that you see commonly break down? What spare parts automatically for me, I lump in filters and service pieces with that. Filters, oils, gears, lubricants. Analyzing something that's critical, chain. It doesn't have to be an expensive piece in order for me to stock it on the shelf. Common wear items, chains, sprockets, bearings. That doesn't mean that you have to keep 20 bearings on hand, but if you get a chance to look at your piece of equipment and you go through the parts list, so this is something that I did. I forget, I had 10 or 12 different conveyors in the plant, but 3 of them used the same bucket size for the leg. And so I didn't need to stock buckets for each leg. I just needed to keep 10 buckets on hand. That way, if one ripped off, I put another one on. In Limble, you can keep track of parts account. We didn't get into that today, and this is what I think you were alluding to, Katie, was that parts inventory. If I build it out on a work order, like you saw, I had oil and filters. You can create a trigger threshold so that way it sends you a PO and says, hey, they used up 9 of the buckets in the plant. You've got 1 left. You should consider reordering. You can set that all up automatically. And so being aware of past tickets, if you aren't the one physically touching the equipment, if you're looking at those tickets coming across your desk, look for commonality. It does require some analyzation, but we were in a unique situation with motors. For instance, we had a ton of electric motors, and we couldn't stock all of them on the shelf as much as we wanted to, but we kept common ones or ones that were absolutely critical to the operation. It becomes from a risk benefit analysis of, if I'm down, can I just go across the road and pick it up? Or is this something that's going to have to come from halfway around the world? Because that's a reality, right? What is the availability of it? Let the parts counter stock it. Let the parts counter keep it on hand. If it's really common, you don't have to have it on your shelf unless you got to go across town. What does it take to go across town, pick up that piece, come back? That's time and money, right?
Totally. Thank you. Let me scroll here. Oh, here was a question about calibration documents. So as you were going through the PM, can you upload your last calibration document to the last calibration day? So say, for example, you had a PM for a calibration. Can you speak to the process a little bit of how you might document that if you've got, a PDF or something like that that needs to be attached to a work order?
Yep. And so it wasn't so much for us attached to the work order. So like you guys saw that I had the check weigher in there. We had Bob's Scalehouse certificate that was in there. When I had our metal detector company come out and certify all of our metal detectors, they would send all those documents to our food safety guy. And then it was really just as simple as attaching that document to the asset. And so you could have 2021, 2022, 2023, all of those certification documents that are on there. If you have a certain calibration procedure that you want followed, you can build that out as a work order template or build that out as a PM. You notice I had those yes, no bubbles in there quite a bit. Did it pass a calibration? No. Okay, follow this procedure. And you could go in and you could create exactly from the operator's manual. That's a lot of what I did. I would even copy and paste from the owner's manuals. I'd have the PDF, 300 and some pages, but I only need this section of it to be followed. Because I'm only working on this area in this PM, you can attach that to the document really easy. And then I love PDFs because they open on almost everything. You can open them on phone, computer, tablet, whatever you have in front of you.
Awesome. Some of these questions I'm going to divert to we're having a live demo next week. So I'll pitch that in a second here, but I want to make sure that I get to the ones that Matt will specifically be able to answer best. Let's see here. Is there a way that you can set up notifications to come before a work order is past due? So the question really is about customizing those notification schedules.
Yeah, that would be a good question. Actually, I'd probably have to go back to Appio or somebody to just be able to get some of those. And that's the great part. That actually brings up a really great point. From my side, if I didn't know something or I'm like, hey, I got this idea. I had answers usually within minutes. And if it wasn't within minutes, almost always it was within the hour of, I got this idea and I want to make it flow. Can we do this? And if you couldn't do it directly, a lot of times we came up with a workaround, or they would say, hey, we got an idea of how you can make this work. And so, actually, you can go in and set up notifications. My email on my phone has been exploding the last several days as I built this out because I haven't completed my PMs on my checkweigher. And so you can set up notifications and you can go in and change that. Now, the intricacies of that, I'll leave up to the sales team to better answer that one.
Yeah, that was great. In the interest of time, this is just a really great question that I can't pass up. But and I'm going to adjust the question just a little bit to be general to to everyone, but Matt, I know you did lots of research in other CMMS systems. Can you speak a little bit more to the differences that you saw with Limble to those when you were doing your research, and what sort of pushed you over the edge, I guess?
Yeah. When I first started out, the first program or two, I didn't know what I wanted. And I didn't know where to start. And that's a lot of why I wanted to speak to everybody here today, is to help. Number one, I love to help. I love brainstorming, coming up with ideas, consulting. And I didn't know where to start. And a lot of these programs left me, they had an intro, we had a conversation, and boom, here's the software, figure it out. And I didn't know what information to track. And so by the time I had gone through 3 or 4 of them, I got a pretty good idea. This is where I developed my flow of one asset. Let's start it. Let's build it. Let's work through it. Some of the things I ran into were, it was great on the computer, but it was lousy on the phone. I couldn't, or it was vice versa. It was great on the phone, but lousy on the computer. It was too complex. I knew, for me, one of the key things is it had to be simple. There was one program I really liked, but like I said, I had to be a computer programmer to use it. And for me, my checkboxes were mobile and simplicity, and support. Right? The company I used to work for, their slogan was support the other half of a great product, or service the other half of a great product. A product can be great, but if you don't have the service to back it up, it means nothing. And every step of the way, I had questions. The salesman that I worked with, fantastic guy. I love him. Still talk with him, actually. And we had a great relationship. He was just as much interested in me and my operation as I was in him and what he had going on in his daily life and what he was doing. And so it was very simple to use. And I had the support of, I got this idea. How do I do it? Boom. Let's put the solution in your hands. And then there's another area that we didn't even get into today of what's coming. Hey, do you like this? Do you not like this? What do you think of this idea? They're listening, folks. If you have an idea, put the idea out there, and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm working on. They're going to look at it and go, oh, that's great. And then they'll put it out there for a poll, and they're going to see how many other people like the idea. And maybe it's something that gets developed into the program. So for me, the advantage was overall the people. You know why? Because they listened and they made it easy, and they listened to the consumer, and they made a great product. Right? That's what we want at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. We do have more questions. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get through them during this time, but we do have them recorded. So, I can divert them to the people that will be able to answer them best. But I also want to invite you all to a live demo that we're doing. Matt, can you see my screen? Okay. Is this the right?
Yep.
Are you seeing the right thing?
Yep.
Awesome. Next week on Wednesday, August 16th, we're going to be doing a live demo about how to manage assets in Limble. So you'll be able to go through with someone on our internal team, a product specialist, going through what that asset builder looks like, how to attach your PMs, the parts, the vendors, and all of that stuff that Matt breezed through here, and get a chance to ask some of these more specific questions. If that is a good time for you, it's something that we'll record, that if you sign up, you'll get a recording as well, just like this one. So we'll hope to see you at that. And if you are interested, if you're not already a Limble user, if you're interested in seeing a demo that's specific to your business, to your team, your department, sign up for a demo. We'll have a product specialist meet with you, and we can start getting you going. This was a great session, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, for being here. We really appreciate it. Any final thoughts you want to share, Matt, before we go?
The only thing I wish is, like, I'm with you guys. I wish we had more time. But truly, if there's anything, I'm looking through the question list here. There was great questions, a lot of great questions. And I wish I could answer each one of them individually. If there's something I can help with in the meantime, please feel free to find me on LinkedIn, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about it. I'm always going to default to Limble. Not because they asked me to. I actually came to them and say, how can I help? I love your program. How can I help others? How can we make this work? Because at the end of the day, like I said in my video, you're going to be hard pressed to find anything better. And the reason is because I found that, for me, it was the best for us. It matched everything that I wanted. Simple, easy to use, mobile. truly great people. Really enjoyed working with all of them. Katie, thank you for this time. Thank you for all your hard effort in this project, putting this together. You did a fantastic job, and really excited to see where this goes for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you everybody for being here. Like I said, find Matt on LinkedIn. We'll share his information in an email that you'll receive with a link to the recording after the meeting. And we'll see you next time, folks. Have a good week.
Take care. We'll see you.